Hello everyone, welcome to the tutorial for the Buddy Dog Walking Bag pattern by Happy Days. I have inserted a grommet into the front of my bag. I'm going to show you how to do this in the tutorial. This is an optional extra, you do not have to add this, and I show you how to construct the bag without it. Just to note, my grommet is too big really for this little pocket that's here. This is for pulling the dog poo bags out, by the way, in case you wonder what it is for. It's the only one I had, and I've had lots of people requesting how to insert this, so I've put a large one in. But obviously, if you can use a smaller one, this is about 7 centimetres across, but you need a smaller one really for this pocket. It would be okay if the bag was bigger, or if it was in the main part of the bag, but because it's just in this little pocket, it's a little big. Anyway, it's a really cute little bag. It's got 2 pockets in it, and then it's got an inside pocket as well, and a lovely little strap. So watch along and I will show you how to construct your bag. So the pieces that you need to have cut out for your Buddy dog walking bag are 2 lining pieces, and then you should have 3 of your main fabric or your patterned fabric pieces. You need some webbing for your handles, and you also need some interfacing, some iron-on interfacing to go on the back of 2 of your main fabric pieces. Okay, so you need to cut out 2 rectangles the same size for your iron-on interfacing. If you haven't ever used iron-on interfacing, it's this stuff here. It's got like a papery side, which is matte, and then on the other side is like a shiny side. This is the glue, and this is what you need to use. This needs to face your fabric to iron on. So if I just turn one piece over, I've already ironed on my interfacing on here, but if I wanted to, I'll just show you how to do it if I hadn't. So I'd lay the glue side to the wrong side of my fabric and just iron it on. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. So I've gone ahead and ironed on the interfacing onto 2 of my main pieces of fabric. Now, if you, during this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to put the grommet in. Now, if you don't want to put a grommet on, you don't need to interface this 3rd piece. If you do want to put a grommet on your pocket piece, on the 3rd piece you're going to use for your pocket, I have just put interfacing on half of it. Now, I did try it with it on the whole of it, but I found that the pocket really become quite stiff to get things in with the grommet as well. So just with half of it, just gives it that extra stability for the grommet, so it holds it in nicely, but doesn't make it too stiff for getting other bits into the pocket. Okay, so get all your pieces ready. And the first thing that we're going to concentrate on is our pocket part. So if you haven't put interfacing on, it doesn't matter, but I have, so don't worry, ignore this part if you're not putting the grommet on. What we're going to do is fold our fabric in half with the right pretty sides facing out. So wrong sides touching, fold it in half. Okay, and we're going to clip it down the sides just to keep it secure, so it doesn't move around, like so. And then we're going to go to the sewing machine, and on the folded edge, so on our top folded edge here, so this is our raw edges, this is our folded edge, we're going to sew a top stitch along this edge, about 1/4 of an inch from the top, just straight the way along there, along the folded edge. Okay, so I'm back from the machine. I've top stitched along this folded edge and given it a nice press with my iron. Now, if you're not inserting a grommet into this bag, I'll show you the next step. If you are, don't do this bit yet. Wait for the next step. Okay, so I'll do this at the end of this part. So if you're not using a grommet, get your outer piece of your bag fabric, the long edges going vertically the short edges going horizontally. We're going to fold the bag vertically in half because what we want to do is find the halfway mark of the bag. Give it a press down with our finger, and that should give us a nice crease line. You can mark this, if you like, with a pen. I've got a friction pen here, so that it will erase off with heat. And then you're going to do the same with the pocket. So you're going to fold it in half to find the centre point of the pocket. And then you're going to line that centre point up with the centre point on your bag. So you've got it nice and central. Okay, so that's mine lined up. So I'm going to go to my sewing machine and sew down here to create my 2 pockets. Okay, so from the top of this pocket piece, I'm going to back stitch here, sew down, back stitch at the bottom. Okay, and that will secure my pocket piece onto my main part. If you are putting the grommet on, don't do this step yet. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to take your piece of fabric. Now, I've only got large grommet rings, so I'm not going to do mine halfway. I'm going to do mine slightly over because I need a little bit more room for my grommet to go on. Okay, so I'm going to have a slightly smaller pocket this way and a slightly bigger one. If you've got the smaller grommets, do exactly the same. Do your halfway point, measure it up so you know where your halfway point is. Okay, but just remember that's your halfway mark. You could draw a straight line down or give it a good crease. Okay, but before you sew it on, you're going to attach your grommet to it. So to do this, we're going to lay our grommet onto our fabric. Now, you can do it on the reverse. So if you want to make the centre marks on both sides so you can see where you're at, you can do it on the reverse of it, if it's easy, if you don't want to see, if you haven't got a friction pen. But if you have got a friction pen or something you can rub out, position your grommet where you want it to be. Like so. I think mine will be about there. Slightly up, I think. And then I'm going to draw inside. I'm literally going to trace the inside circle with my pen. Like so. Okay. So I undid my grommet so that the 2 sides are not together. And I've literally drawn around that inner circle. Now, I like to draw the outer circle as well, because when I have to go out a little bit more, it gives me a guide. I'm just going to do this lightly. Now, it's entirely up to you whether you do this step. I mean, this pen does iron off, so I'm quite happy to use it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this inner circle out, okay? Because we need to be able to fit our grommet in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clip this side, because what I want is these pieces of fabric to stay together. Okay, so I don't want them moving around. So I'm going to clip my side to keep it stable. And then I'm going to clip along this bottom edge as well, just to keep it all together. I practice on a scrap piece of fabric before I do this to make sure that it works. Okay, so I know where to cut it. So when you've got your grommet, because some of them have got pattern pieces, they're different sizes. So I always use a scrap piece first, just before I do it on the piece that I'm going to use. So I've already had a go. And if you can see, look, it sits on there really snugly. And that's the look we're aiming for. We're aiming for it to be nice and snug in. So we don't want to cut the hole too big to start with. So I've got my circle pieces drawn, and I'm going to fold my fabric there in half so that I can just snip to get started. Oh, okay. So I've just snipped it to get it started. I'm going to put in my little scissors and snip to this inner circle, and then cut right the way round. I'm trying to do this in the camera. It's not the easiest thing to do, because I'm trying to keep it close enough so you can see. So I might go a bit off centre in a minute, but hopefully it'll be all right. Okay, it doesn't matter. Honestly, if this isn't perfect, you're not going to see, because it gets hidden in. You should see some of the hideous circles that I've cut before. Okay, so I've cut my circle out, and I'm going to try my grommet on there. And as you can see at the moment, it's not fitting, it's going to be a real struggle and it's going to really start to pull my fabric. So I need to cut a slightly larger circle. And this is why I do this outside one, because then I can see that I'm only cutting, you know, like I'm keeping within, not only within that circle, but trying to keep it even all the way around. So I'm just literally cutting that much more. Okay, each time only cut a little bit more, because you don't want to end up with extra, you know, like your hole too big. So you're just going to trim round again, cutting a little bit extra off right the way around your circle. Like I say, don't worry too much about it not looking too pretty, because you're not going to see this. Okay, and then I'm going to try again and see if it fits. And I'm aiming for a really snug fit over the top of this grommet. And as you can see, that time, I've ended up with a lovely snug fit. Just check on the back that your fabric's not pulling, so it's sitting nicely. Okay, so you can see it's like come up like the sides of the grommet there. Okay, so a nice and snug fit. All you do now is clip on the outer part of the grommet. Okay, and this is why you need to make sure that this pocket is interfaced, because it gives it a real stability. Now, before you clip this on, you can iron off your pen if you want to, if you've used it, and then pop it back on. It's fine. I should just probably take mine off and go and do that in a minute. So we're back to the same step as everyone else now. If you've not put the grommet on, you're going to put it onto your main piece, and then if you've used a smaller grommet, you're going to sew halfway down. I'm going to sew just off slightly because my grommet's so big. So I'm going to go and sew straight the way down here, the same method, back stitch, straight down, back stitch at the bottom. Okay, back from sewing, I've put my my line down here to create my 2 pockets. I've got my hole for my grommet. I've removed the grommet because it's just unnecessary bulk in there at the moment. Do check that your grommet comes apart and it's not a permanent fix before you push it down and secure it on for good, okay? Because it is easier to sew your bag up without it being on, right? It's not impossible, but to sew it on with it. But especially if you're a beginner, it's easier if you haven't got the grommet on. You don't need it on at the moment. Okay, so we've got our piece with our pockets secured. Now we're going to take our other outer piece of fabric and we're going to lay it pretty side facing down. So the pretty sides of our fabric should be touching, okay? You should be looking at the wrong side of your fabric and the wrong side of your fabric on this side. And you're going to clip down these edges to keep it all together, or use pins if you prefer. Line it all up nice and neatly, all your edges. And then the sides that we've just clipped, we're going to go to the sewing machine and sew down. Now I'm going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance on mine. So I'm going to sew down here, along the bottom and up this side. We need to leave this bit opening at the top. So our pocket should be at the bottom. This is the top of our bag. So you need to leave the opening at the top open. Okay, so your pocket is in here, down these sides, along the bottom. You're just going to go and sew them now. Okay, I've sewn round the 3 sides of my bag and I'm now going to clip these corners. Now I've got to be careful not to cut through my stitches, so I'm just going to cut a diagonal across. This helps with the bulk, and you can cut some of this seam allowance off as well if you want, if you don't want it to have so much on. So I'm just going to cut my corners and I'm just going to trim along this bottom, because where I've used interfacing, it's given a bit of bulk, so I'm going to cut that off so I don't need it. Okay, now I'm going to turn my bag in the right way. I'm going to turn it through. Just push out the corners at the bottom. I've got my little grommet hole there. see why I've taken the grommet back out, because it's just a bit easier to do that. I'm going to poke those corners out at the bottom there. Okay, straighten this up a bit more. And I'm just going to grab my purple thing. Sorry, I moved it out the way. Let's get them in. And I'm just going to poke these corners out, because look how lovely they come out when you use that. This is my purple thing. If you haven't seen this, I use this in all my tutorials. My favourite thing to use. Okay, so there we go. There is the almost completed outer part of your bag. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to attach our straps. So the best way, people often say, well, how long are your straps? How long do you know, how do you know how long you need them? Just put it over your arm, over your shoulder like that, and let it dangle, and think about where the bag is going to hang. And that is where I cut my strap off, giving a little bit to sew into the actual bag. That is how I work out how much I actually need for my bag. Okay, so I need this amount. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my ends of my strap, and I'm going to measure in 1 centimetre from this edge, and then attach it on. So I've got my little ruler there. That's about 1 centimetre, and I'm just going to clip it on. Now make sure you don't clip it right the way through. You only want to clip it to one side of your bag. And then when you're putting your handle on, you need to make sure that it's not twisted. Okay, you don't want to sew it on and then you've got a twisted handle. So he's going to do exactly the same with this side. So we're going to measure along at about 1 centimetre again, which is about there. And then I'm going to clip it on. Now, I am going to go to my machine now, and I'm going to stitch really, really close to this edge just to keep this handle in place, okay? This is not going to be the final stitch. We are going to secure this on properly, but at the moment I want these handles to stay on where they are. So I'm literally right close to this edge, close as I can. I'm just going to stitch along both of these pieces on my sewing machine. Okay, so I'm just back from securing my handles onto the top of my bag, and I'm just going to put this to one side now because we don't need that bit for the moment. We're going to take our 2 lining pieces. Now, if you've got a right side and a wrong side to your lining piece, then I will talk you through it. Mine both look the same, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Lay your first piece of your lining fabric with the pretty side facing upwards. So the wrong side of your lining facing down. I know it's difficult to see when I haven't got, mine's all pink, but just try and remember or try and work it out as you go. So then we're going to lay our other piece of lining with the pretty side of it touching the pretty side. Okay, so we're going to flip it over. So you should be looking at the wrong side of your fabric on the back and the wrong side underneath, okay? Pretty side to pretty side. We're just going to line those up and clip along these edges again. So just the 3 edges along the bottom again. Like so. And then we're going to go to our sewing machine and we're going to stitch down these sides again. The only difference is on this bottom bit here, we're going to leave about a 4-inch gap, okay, which is roughly about what I've left there. We're going to leave this open because when we have sewn our bag together, we need this to pull our bag through. This will get stitched shut at the end, but for now we need to leave this open. So what we're going to do, we're going to start here, back stitch to secure it, because what you don't want to do is if you don't secure it, then when you try and pull your bag through, it's going to all come undone. So back stitch there, sew along up this side, stop, and then come back to this side, back stitch here, sew along and up this side, and then come back. Okay, so I'm back from stitching along, leaving my gap in the bottom. I've done it in white so you can see clearly what I've done. Now I'm going to keep my bag this way, so I want this inside out, and I'm going to take my other bit and the straps, and I'm going to put this inside this bag. So this should be the right way out. So you should be able to see your pockets and the straps, and you're going to tuck it in here. Make sure your straps are down, okay? Down and straight, all right? You can line them up more neatly when they're inside. So we're just going to feed this inside this bag like this. Now it's a little bit tight, but just wiggle it around and you'll get it in. Okay, like so. And what we're going to do is match up our side seams. Okay, so this side seam of the lining and the side seam of the outer fabric, we're going to match it up. Open our seams up like so, and then clip that there. Oh, my clip's a bit closer. And then do the same on this side. So we're going to match up our seams. Open our seams out. It's a little bit fiddly and it's not easy when I am actually looking through the camera to do it. So, okay, so I've lined those up. And then what I want to do is make sure that my bag handles are laying in and straight. Okay, and then I'm going to clip around this top edge. Okay, just going to check my handles first because they're really important that you get that bit right. I know it seems counterintuitive because the handles are down in this way, but honestly, it will all work out. If you're new to bag making, if you're an experienced bag maker, this will be a walk in the park for you. Once you've made a few bags, they're mainly all constructed in the same way, so it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so there we go. Let's put one more in. Now I'm going to go to the machine and I'm going to stitch these two parts of the bag together, okay, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to go right the way around the top of this bag. Okay, so I've sewn around the top of my bag like so, and now all that I need to do now is to pull my bag out through this hole that I made at the bottom. So I'm just going to wiggle it right the way through. There we go. Now, you obviously have got a gap in this lining at the bottom from where you've just used it to pull through the bag. So we're going to poke our corners out of this and poke our corners out here. Just make sure everything's neat and pulled through, because once you do this next step, you won't be able to go back and change it. So when you're happy it's all pulled out nicely, you're going to take your bag back to the sewing machine and you're going to tuck these raw edges in so they match the rest of the bottom of the seam. So you're just going to do that. I usually go and iron it because it helps it stay in place while I stitch it. So I'm just going to go, there you go, join them up, and then you're going to sew along the bottom of here just to close this hole up. Okay. So I've sewn my lining shut, and all I need to do now is to push my lining fabric into my bag like so. Push it right down in nice and neatly. Wriggle this top bit up because we want to have a nice crisp edge along here. So just spend a bit of time bringing this up, wriggling it round like so. And then what we're going to do for final little part of the bag is I'm going to go and press mine first before I do this so I can get a nice sharp edge. And then I'm going to top stitch right the way around the top of my bag. Okay, make sure your handles are upwards this time, like so. Okay, just separate that lining and that fabric there, so it's nice. See how nice and crisp that is. You're just going to top stitch right the way round the top of your bag. Okay, so I've top stitched around my bag. So if you are not putting the grommet in, well done. You've now completed your buddy dog walking bag. If you have, if you are going to put your grommet in and you have taken it off for sewing, now's the time to reinsert it in. So you can just pop your grommet back in your bag as like so. Clip on the top, and there you go. Your completed dog walking bag. Thank you for watching my tutorial, and I hope to see you again soon for another.